Struggling to communicate with your co-parent? That's why Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger was created. It's a communication tool for all co-parents, but especially those who are in high conflict situations. I always tell co-parents who ask, sign up for Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger as early as possible in your separation and divorce process, because you never know when you're going to need a more robust communication tool that allows you to set boundaries on the communication you have with your co-parent. Are you getting messages that look like war and peace? It's not a text message. It's the length of a novel. Set the brief chat limitation in the app and keep those messages short and to the point. It's about the kids, right? Keep the focus there. You can also limit the number of messages you receive in a day and other nice a la carte features meant to bring sanity to your life. You deserve that, and your kids do too. Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger in the Apple App Store and soon in the Google Play Store. Go to peacefulparentapp.com for more information. This week on Peaceful Co-Parenting Podcast.
And FOG is in capital letters, F-O-G, and it's fear, obligation, and guilt. When you are living in that fog, you're living out of fear of their anger. You're living out of obligation. You feel like it's your job to fix all of this. And you're living out of guilt because you feel guilty if, you're not feeling intimate with them, or if you want to leave the relationship, or if you do leave the relationship. There's a lot of guilt involved in all of this. And so when you start seeing that and understanding why you're living in that fog, the fog starts to lift.
Welcome to Peaceful Co-Parenting Podcast, where we discuss strategies and tips to improve your co-parenting situation, especially if it's high conflict. I'm Bianca Balogh, co-parent, mother, and entrepreneur, creator of Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger app, and believer in turning challenging situations into something positive.
This week, we're talking about covert narcissists. We'll answer the question, what is a narcissist? We'll also cover how a covert narcissist is different. Someone very close to this topic is our special guest today, Renee Swanson. She wrote a book called Parenting with a Toxic Partner, Helping Our Kids Survive and Thrive Amidst Emotional Abuse. Renee is also a relationship coach specifically focused on those dealing with narcissistic abuse. She launched a couple of Facebook pages focused on this topic. She has almost 50,000 followers on her Covert Narcissist Facebook page. Renee, welcome. How you doing today?
Thank you, Bianca. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me as your guest today. And I want to say that Facebook group now is actually over 51,000 people. So we have crossed that 50,000 number.
Nice. It's kind of a hot topic. It feels like the narcissist word is popping up more and more. Where do you see some of your followers coming from?
Well, the narcissist word is definitely popping up more, and a lot of people are, throwing it around, and it gets used sometimes a little overused for sure. But people who have lived those relationships, they know they've lived it, and if you talk to someone who gets it, that they understand. The people in my group are coming from all around the world. And I will say this, I hate it for every single one of them that has to join my group. I wish that they did not, but these are people coming from spousal relationships or boyfriend-girlfriend relationships or any type of, romantic relationship, as well as people who have dealt with this as their parent, a narcissist as a parent or a sibling, even some coworkers and friends, but mostly we find more of the intimate relationships.
Sure. You've got the Covert Narcissist Facebook page and also a Divorcing the Covert Narcissist. Is that correct?
I do. And I've got one more actually, which is Parenting with a Toxic Partner. And I have a third group that is specifically for those trying to parent or co-parent in that situation.
Gotcha. So tell our listeners a little bit more about you and how you got into this field.
So I got into it out of need for myself. I was in a marriage that lasted almost 21 years. And at the point at which I started exploring what's wrong in my marriage, and of course I started, talking to friends, talking to my family members, trying to figure out what was going on. And my friends kept pushing me, go see a therapist, go talk to a counselor, go get some guidance on this. So I walked in, I'd been married about, at this point, probably 15 years. And walked into a therapist, and he said, why are you here? And I said, I'm here because of my marriage. And I started describing to him what was going on. I got about 5 minutes into it, and he stopped me and said, do you know the word narcissism? And I said, kind of, sort of. I know a little bit, not a lot. And he said, okay, we need to explore this. And that began a journey that was absolutely life-changing for me. what he described as a narcissist kind of fit. It fit in a lot of ways, but not quite. And then we went a little further and explored covert narcissism, and that fit to a T. Like that was where all the light bulbs went off.
All right. So that takes me to my next question. Let's give our listeners a little context. What is covert narcissism?
Okay. So narcissism itself is this sense of entitlement. It's an arrogance. It's the world all revolves around me, the center of the party, the life of the party. And an overt narcissist, they are very outgoing, and most of the world around them knows that they are an arrogant person and very self-centered. A covert narcissist, this is not true. They still hold the same sense of entitlement, superiority, all of that on the inside, but they recognize that showing that to the world is something that they don't want to do. They don't want to come across as being arrogant, and so they protect it. And instead, what they come across as is actually can come across as being a compassionate person, but it's very manipulative. There's a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot of gaslighting. And I describe it a lot of times that instead of the life of the party, they are the victim of the world. They are the eternal victim of everything, and they find offense at everything. And everything is, you're not treating me good enough.
Okay. So victim is the key word, it sounds like.
Victim. Yes. They are very victim minded.
Okay. So let's talk about clinical narcissistic personality disorder and then just narcissistic traits. Like,
Okay.
a lot of people are never going to get a clinical diagnosis that say their intimate partner or their former partner is a narcissist, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it is incredibly hard to actually get a diagnosis of this, especially with covert narcissism, because they put on such a strong mask and show they're capable of showing as being a very conscientious person. They know how to play that part really, really well. The abusive side of it underneath is only behind closed doors. They're never going to show it to a therapist or a counselor. And in fact, they believe inside themselves that they are a compassionate person. They believe it to the nth degree. And so they can seem so genuine, but yet their hypersensitivity to being, they're just offended by anything you do, any question you ask, all of this. And that's where all the abuse comes in, because it's a guilt manipulation. They manipulate your own desire to be a good person, and they use that against you. So it is incredibly difficult. It's like trying to catch a ghost. You feel like you understand it 1 minute, and then it's just gone. Like you don't have a clue what it really truly is. And so, yes, an actual diagnosis is very, very rare. And a full-blown, I put it on a spectrum. And for 1 to 10, a full-blown narcissistic person being, an extreme 10, the other end of the scale, the spectrum, being a codependent, an extreme codependent, and that's a 1. And then you have this number system, 1 to 10. A healthy range in the middle is a 4, 5, or a 6. You're still going to lean towards some codependent traits or narcissistic traits, but you may not be full blown, And so a lot of people might be in that 6, 7, 8 range where they're not a diagnosed narcissist, but there's still such, it's so difficult to have a healthy relationship with them. And that's where you kind of go, okay, but we're carrying narcissistic traits, which makes it impossible to have that healthy dynamic at home, but they're not actually a full-blown narcissist.
so are you saying that we all fall somewhere on this spectrum?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we float on that spectrum. And it was Dr. Craig Malcolm, that actually introduced me to the idea of all of this through his book. The spectrum is, you float on it. Like some days you're going to be more caring towards other people, and you might be more apt to take care of other people's needs. And other days you might be more self-centered. And we all tend to do some of that. And so people see narcissistic traits in themselves. Victims of narcissistic abuse see traits of it in themselves, and they often will get a little panicked about that. Maybe I'm the narcissist. And this is why they see it, because we all are going to do some of these things. We're all going to have those moments of being a little self-focused or a little overly sensitive or a little defensive, but that doesn't make you a narcissist.
Because the narcissist inherently is not going to go get therapy, and because they think they're awesome, right? They think that it's all about them. They're right. Maybe they're the victim.
And so everybody else is to blame. They're not going to go and have
Right.
any insight
Right.
that they might be a part of the problem. So that's not going to happen, right? Typically the narcissist isn't going to go seek out therapy.
It's everybody else's fault. If they go to therapy because you as the spouse are going, look, if you don't go get help, I'm leaving, they might then go, but they're going to be honest from their perspective, but their perspective is so manipulated that they're going to go and say, well, yeah, but my spouse did this and this and this to me, which is that hypersensitivity coming out. And what you did, maybe you asked them to scoot the car over in the garage, or maybe you asked them to empty the dishwasher, but those hurt their feelings so much that now they're angry and blowing up at you.
Mm-hmm. So,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does, actually, because they believe it. They don't think they have a problem. So
right. So they'll go to a therapist, but they're never going to actually be honest with them because their perspective is so skewed.
They're being honest from their perspective.
They have no ability to truly self-reflect. A healthy person is willing to self-reflect and go, okay, was my perspective wrong? Did I hurt them? And come back and apologize. And a covert narcissist cannot do that.
Mm-hmm. So how do you know your spouse is a narcissist? Then, is there some test that you can take and answer all these questions and find out like what's up?
Yeah, you can't prick blood and find out that way. No, it's not going to happen.
Can't do a DNA test?
No, you can't do a DNA test. No. There's checklists all out there. I've got some of my own checklist out. People can jump on my website, and if you sign up for my mailing list, you get a free checklist right then and there. The traits of covert narcissism. And that's some of what we're talking about. But a lot of times a victim won't see the traits necessarily in the spouse, but they'll see it in themselves. Sometimes it's easier to see the signs of the abuse in the victim than it is in the actual abuser, like as an outsider looking in. And so if I've got a person who, they're overthinking everything, and I've got to come up with the magical way to say this to him so that he doesn't get offended. And I go, well, what are you trying to say to him? And they say, oh, I'm trying to ask what kind of dress I should wear tonight. What? If you're working that hard to come up with how to ask, where do you want to go for dinner tonight? There's a problem. And so a lot of times you can see the signs inside the victim quicker than you can as an outsider looking in than you can in the actual abuser.
Yeah. I can imagine that space starts to feel normal for a person who's, say, not the narcissist. You start to feel like this stuff you're doing is, it's your everyday. So it starts to feel normal. And then
until you can't take it anymore, because you're overworking, you're overanalyzing, you're walking on eggshells. It's that walking on eggshells of tap dancing, trying to make sure that person is always happy, because you pay too high of a price when they are offended, and they're offended by everything. And so you're working in overdrive to keep them from being offended, and you're failing at it.
So why is it important for people to be able to identify whether their intimate partner is a narcissist?
Because of the effect it's having on them and the effect it's having on their children. Because when you're in that relationship, it's like you said, you don't realize it until you reach that point. You're paying for it by your own health, and by health, I mean your physical health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, your mental health. All of this deteriorates. It's like if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, that frog's going to instantly jump out. But if you put a frog in a regular pot of water and you slowly turn up the temperature, that frog does not realize that they're about to boil, and they will stay in that water environment, and they will die, in that pot of water. But if you just dumped them right in, they of course would jump out. So if we knew all this abuse was there and we just jumped into that environment, we would leave. But because it's so gradual, there's a mask that they wear, there's love bombing that happens. They're playing that perfect partner for so long until these little symptoms and traits start showing up. And then you're 20 years into a marriage and don't understand why you feel worthless, you feel hopeless, you feel like you can't do anything right, you feel exhausted from working so hard to keep peace in the home. And so when those eyes start opening, you've got to find help, because it's a desperate situation.
Do you find that there's a typical person that narcissists are attracted to?
Yes, very much so. What I find is people who are willing to do more than their fair share of the work, people who are willing to work a little extra hard in a relationship. You find people who are very, very focused on keeping other people happy. You desire to care for that person's needs a little extra. And so you're willing to maybe go the extra mile. Those are the people that typically end up in these relationships. People who like to help others or fix others. Like if you have that little bit of that mindset of, well, I know they're hurting, so I want to help them and I want to be there for them, that supportive mindset. All of these are good traits. There's nothing wrong with any of these traits, but they get abused. They get used against you.
Okay. So is it the codependent side of the spectrum that is attracted to the other side?
Yes. Yeah. It's the codependent traits. Really what I kind of think of as codependency is these are good traits in us that get used against us or get taken to the extreme. Like a codependent trait would be just over willing to forgive others, like over and willing to not hold people accountable for their crimes, if you want to call it that. It's a good thing to be able to forgive other people. But if it gets taken too far, then it becomes that codependent trait of, I can't even hold him accountable for anything that he has done or said to me because I'm not willing to rock the boat.
So boundaries, would you say that they have a lack of boundaries?
Yes, or willing to sacrifice their boundaries, willing to inconvenience myself.
Okay.
Before I would ever consider inconveniencing someone else. And so I'm willing to let go of those boundaries. And what it becomes then is you actually lose the ability to set boundaries. Like it goes to that extreme.
So in your experience, are narcissistic traits more common in men or in women? Or do you see that it's about 50-50 or?
There's a lot of debate on that. In my group, there's no doubt in the Facebook group that it is dominantly women who are there as the victims. Okay, so dominantly males that are playing that narcissistic role is dominantly what's in my group. It is starting to balance more and more. There are more men coming forward. I don't know, at this point, a lot of the experts are still questioning that. And is it 50-50 and just that more women are willing to talk about it? We've not created a society where men could step forward and say, hey, I'm a victim of abuse here. There's definitely are narcissistic women out there. And I've known quite a few of them. There are definitely men who are victims of this. And I'm glad to see them starting to step forward and be more vocal about it and get the help that they need.
Let's switch gears a little bit and focus on co-parenting with a narcissist.
Okay.
What are some of the challenges?
So the challenges are one of the biggest challenges that I faced is here I was parenting with, my partner who I expected to be a teammate, somebody I could also rely on, who provides no emotional safety to anyone in the household. And so our kids had no emotional safety with him. They always were that walking on eggshells. Basically, they were doing from, their toddler years. They're always trying to make sure they keep dad happy. And even at a very young age, they're doing this. And so it becomes their baseline. They don't know any different. But my son one time said to me, he goes, this was later, this was in his teenage years, but he said to me, he goes, I could never be happy around dad, but I could never be unhappy around you, me as the other parent. And because us as the other parent, we sometimes will go to the other extreme. They can never be good enough for him. In my environment, it was their dad. They could never be good enough for their dad. So I went to the other extreme of overindulging for them and trying to make sure I was always building them up. And so it became this toxic balance of, not understanding how to please dad, and everything they did was wonderful in my eyes. And I'm over pleasing, if that makes sense. And so they have a hard time finding, what's a healthy normal. And so the kids are going to really struggle with that.
Okay. And then how about after you separated and you were trying to work together, but in different households, and how did that play out with trying to work with a narcissist as a co-parent?
So in my situation, it's been very different than a lot of the people that I work with. So I'm going to answer that from both perspectives there. For me, when I really, truly realized what was going on, got my eyes open to it, I was a lot beaten down, but it was not at a time when I felt like I could divorce him. Like I could not walk out of the marriage right then. My kids were at that point, roughly about 13 and 15 years of age. And for me to leave right then meant they would have to go spend 50% of their time with him because there was no physical abuse. There was nothing that could be proven in court. And so I knew they would have to go spend that time with him. And I couldn't handle the thought of me not being there. I've been playing buffer for them for years. And for me to not be there and be that buffer for them was just not the right environment for us. And so I actually stayed in the marriage until my boys were 18 and 16. And so when I actually divorced at that point, co-parenting, there wasn't much left. My 18-year-old, of course, then at that point was independent. And my 16-year-old, he was having to go spend some weekends there because that was still court ordered, but he could choose me as the custodial parent. And so he was with me the far majority of the time.
Gotcha.
The people who I work with where their children are young, that's a very, very different situation. And so in a way, I was kind of blessed that I didn't have to deal with this while my children were young. I was co-parenting in the home. Now, as my therapist put it, it's like my husband was going through the house, slamming all the doors shut because he kept slamming on everybody's hearts. And I'm running through the house, opening them all back up and trying to open up communication again. And so I was doing all that co-parenting still in my own home.
So how do you see it play out then with some of the people that you talk to in your Facebook group and some of your coaching?
So there's a lot of different dynamics that play out. Some people, the kids are absolutely targets of the abuse, and some they're not. For my situation in the home, my kids were targets of that abuse. I've got thousands of stories that I've written out of just the abuse that they were targeted, and they definitely, paid a lot of the price for that. But a lot of families, some of the families, the kids are not the target of the abuse, and they actually have a good relationship with that parent. It depends on where the targeting is. Narcissists have to have a fuel supply. They have to have somebody who is filling that void inside of them. If it is you as the target, as the spouse, then when you step out of that and you divorce or you separate, that can cause the targeting to go at the kids. And that can be, a very tough situation. If they're the kind of person who goes and explores another relationship right off the bat, some do, some don't. And if all of a sudden they're into another intimate relationship, now that person is their target, they can still have a healthy relationship with their kids. And so there's a lot of dynamics at play as to how that really plays out.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that, because it's true. Sometimes a person can have a great relationship with their children and not be very healthy with their co-parent. And we were talking earlier before we started recording about this podcast and that we offer hope here. And so talk to me about how you can move forward in the healthiest, most graceful way possible when you find that you're co-parenting with a narcissist.
Absolutely. So my mission in life, no matter whether people are in the relationship or out of the relationship, whether they have children or don't have children, whether they want to stay or whether they want to leave, all of that is situational and can only be decided by the person who is, trying to make these decisions. So my mission is to help people to recover from the abuse, to find health inside them again, and learn to set the boundaries that they need to set for their own self-protection so that they can then make whatever decisions they need to make. So it's kind of like putting your own oxygen mask on first. If you're in an airplane and they say, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help your child. It's kind of the same thing here. If I'm a beaten down emotional wreck because of the abuse from my husband, I cannot be the kind of parent I need to be for my children. Whether I leave or stay in the marriage, I don't care. I have to take charge of my own health. It's a radical personal responsibility for my own health, my own emotional health, my mental health, my psychological health, all of this, so that then I can be the right kind of parent for my kids and make healthy decisions.
Mm-hmm. So in your Facebook group, do you find that people are relieved to discover that, say, their ex-spouse is a narcissist because they can actually then start to understand and prepare? Do you find that a lot of them are kind of spinning out after the end of the relationship, kind of like in this whirlwind of chaos? And then once they kind of figure this out, then they can move forward, have a path to move forward?
Absolutely. Yeah. I call it a fog. And you'll see that actually a lot out in the language about narcissistic fog. And fog is in capital letters, FOG, and it's fear, obligation, and guilt. When you are living in that fog, you're living out of fear of their anger. You're living out of obligation. You feel like it's your job to fix all of this. And you're living out of guilt because you feel guilty if, you're not feeling intimate with them, or if you want to leave the relationship, or if you do leave the relationship. There's a lot of guilt involved in all of this. And so when you start seeing that and understanding why you're living in that fog, the fog starts to lift. And as it lifts, you find yourself again. It's like being buried under a building that just collapsed on top of you, and you're buried under all this rubble, but you still exist. And you got to start pulling the rubble off of you. And that happens by connecting with other people. You realize you're not alone. When you find that one person who says, oh my gosh, this is what I live too, and they start describing it, the feeling that you get that you are not alone in this is overwhelming. And so that's why I run group sessions. I run group coaching sessions for that reason, because the connection with other victims is such a valuable tool. And as that fog starts to lift, as that rubble starts to get off of you, people start becoming themselves again. Victims tell me all the time, I don't even know who I am anymore. Of course you don't, because you're living in this thick fog. And so if you can get that fog lifted, which is clarity, when you start listening to the podcast and you go, oh my gosh, that's what's going on here. That's why I've got all these doubts in my head. That's why I've got all these thoughts in my head. And so the clarity helps tremendously to get that fog lifted. And again, then the focus being able to make healthy decisions for you and for your children.
I can imagine these are all different situations. They're different and unique. The narcissists are all different people as well, but you probably see a theme.
Very much so.
When you connect with someone else, you're like, how did you know all of this was happening? Because you do see so many similarities.
There are so many similarities. People laugh and they say, it's like they all took the same class in college or something, because it's like a script that they go through. And I have people tell me all the time, and I do individual coaching too. And I have people tell me all the time, it's like you're inside my head. And I said, yeah, it's a script. It's a script. This is what they're going through. This is how you feel because of it. So these are the thoughts going through your head. I bet what you're thinking, in that situation is this and this and this. And they're like, yes. And just to be able to put it into words is one of the biggest challenges that victims have.
Do you do group coaching and individual coaching as well? I
do. I'm a certified life coach. And then my personal choice of focus is on covert narcissistic abuse. And so that's, because of the years of the life I lived and then all the people that I work with in my Facebook group and in my sessions. So yes, I do group coaching. It's no more than 10 people. The topics we work through is, what is a covert narcissist? What are the traits inside of me that brought me to that relationship? We take a look at those codependent relationships or conditioned dependency. A lot of people choose to call it that. And I understand that you've been conditioned to fulfill these roles in your narcissistic spouse's life. And so you're playing therapist to them. You're playing to the kids, you're playing both mom and dad because you can't rely on this other parent. And so you're actually fulfilling so many different roles. And actually you end up parenting the narcissist, and so you're playing a parenting role to them too. We go through all of this in the group coaching and start to identify all of that. And as you identify it, then you can choose. That's a role I don't want to play anymore. And if I don't play that role, how much more mental space can I have back in my life? And I want to step out of that role. So you learn to start setting those boundaries so that you can choose the roles you want to play and not feel guilty about it. You don't have to be playing the savior to the world inside your own home. You are allowed to be human, and people start recognizing that they're allowed to step out of some of those roles. It's incredibly empowering.
So what other resources on covert narcissists would you like to share?
You mentioned the book. This is the book I've written. It's called Parenting with a Toxic Partner. Okay, that's the one you mentioned at the beginning. I do have that. And then the current resources I have available are my Facebook group. It's Covert Narcissism Group. So my business name is CNG, Covert Narcissism Group. And then I use that if people are not comfortable with telling somebody what CNG means, like if they can't say that to their mother-in-law, for example, then the CNG stands for community and grace. Community is such a huge aspect of what I do. So I have the group coaching sessions. I do individual one-on-one sessions. Both of those are available. The Facebook group is, like I said, over 51,000 people. It is a closed group, so you have to request to join, and we're very protective of who's allowed in. So I have the divorce group that you mentioned, Divorcing a Covert Narcissist, and then also the Parenting with a Toxic Partner is a Facebook, again, a closed Facebook group. I am going to be creating some online courses where people can just, if they don't have the resources or the time commitment to do the group coaching, they still could go to an online course, where they could do it on their own time.
Why does this fill you up? Why is this your passion?
Well, I love to help people. I have a passion for helping children. I have a passion for helping parents who are parenting those kids. And because of the pain that I've been through in my own marriage and watching my own children suffer from this, I'm very passionate about helping others and turning that around into a positive. Every time I can help even one person, it helps to make my journey make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate to that. Yeah. Okay, so what's the future hold for you? Is there anything you're working on right now that's related to this topic that you'd like to share? Maybe that's something on the horizon for you.
So yes, the group coaching sessions, I've got the next session starting on May 31st. So it's just about to open up. So if anybody wants to jump in on that, we still have some spaces available. We limit it to 10. And I have 3 sessions that are opening up. So I have 3 different times, days of the week and times that they can choose from. And then I am actually starting to put together retreats. We're doing our very first retreat this October, in-person live retreat, but it is only for people who have been through at least one round of group coaching with me. They have to have been through that in order to sign up for the retreat. And this is the first, hopefully the first of many, where we'll be doing these retreats and opening up for people to come and actually be in person with each other.
Yeah, nice. That's so cool.
So I'm excited. Yeah, I'm really, truly excited about that. So, but the group sessions are kind of my main focus right now. And the individual one-on-one, I'm always available for that. The group sessions are just so powerful and just so beneficial as people can share their stories. They can learn from each other in that. We go through trauma bonding. We go through, why am I want the relationship? I don't want the relationship. Why am I on this cycle of in and out, and so we're able to work through all of that.
Does this cost money for people to do the retreat and the group?
Yes, the group session is a 6-week program, and the cost of that program is $300. And that covers the whole 6 weeks. And then anyone who's in my group, if they want to do some one-on-one sessions with me, they also get a discount then on that. And then the retreat, it does cost. I'm actually in the process of putting the final package for that together, trying to keep the cost down as much as I can, because I understand that people, some people who are in these situations are financially trapped. Sometimes it's financial abuse that they're going through. And so I do my best to help people, through that.
And so how can people get in touch with you, Renee?
So you can get in touch with me by email is the best way. Facebook works as well. But by email, my email address is Renee, RENEE, at covertnarcissism.com. I also have a separate email address that is for people who are not comfortable with the word narcissism showing up in their emails. Some people, their spouses may have access to their email address, and so they can't have that word narcissism show up. And so that email address is Renee, RENEE, at cnglifecoaching.com.
And links to all the resources that Renee mentioned during the podcast episode will be in the show notes. It's been great speaking with you, Renee. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, what I'd like to add is there is a life after narcissism. For anybody who's in this situation, please seek help, because there is help to be found. Even just gaining awareness and clarity is such a huge step in your healing that, then the path of whatever life is going to look like for you will start to become open, and you'll get more mental space and heart space to be able to handle, what you're going through. So I know it's overwhelming. I reached that point where I was a puddle on the floor and thought, I can't do this. I know that moment or that space of complete despair, it's an emptiness that's the most painful void that I've ever been through in my life. But there is hope after that. There is life. I'm here to tell you right now, I'm just so happy. I'm 3 years out, almost 3.5 years out of that marriage. I'm in such a better place and so much stronger and more in charge of my life. So I just want people to know that I understand that despair, and there is hope out there, and there are positive days coming.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm happy for you, because you do look happy.
I am very happy. Thank you, Bianca. And thank you so much for having me as a guest here on your podcast.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Peaceful Co-Parenting Podcast. I hope the time was well spent and you got a lot out of the episode. If so, please rate and review the podcast. I would really appreciate it. If you're interested in sending me a feedback message, asking a question, suggesting a podcast topic or guest, or downloading Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger as a tool for better communication with your co-parent, go to peacefulparentapp.com or see the links in the show notes. Have a great week, and as always, stay peaceful.
This episode of Peaceful Co-Parent was brought to you by the Equal Shared Parenting Program. Do you find that you're ever in need of someone to talk to, like a counselor or a therapist? How about legal advice? If you've looked into it, you know these services can add up financially. That's why the Equal Shared Parenting Program exists, to help parents be their healthiest holistic selves. It's a membership program that offers discounted and free services like behavioral health, free tax prep and advice, and access to financial education and credit counseling, all for the low price of $29.99 a month. Learn more about the Equal Shared Parenting Program by going to equalsharedparentingbenefits.org/PCPM. The PCPM stands for Peaceful Co-Parenting Messenger. That's equalsharedparentingbenefits.org/PCPM.